Welcome, my lovely brothers and sisters. Today we do the last part of the Kingdom of Death, chapter 7 of the West Penry book, The Battles Between Shadow and Light, which is a battle in actuality that is taking place within us, and everything that happens outside in this world is in actuality a reflection of the things also happening inside of us. But there are also things deliberately instigated in this so-called world, and nothing in this so-called world is at random. Everything is planned, everything goes according a script. Um, so all that is happening in this world right now, with all the wars and whatever that's going on, was already planned, was scripted a long time ago. And it wouldn't even surprise me if this was already in the making some 200s of years ago. If you know that the making of the European Union was already on a drawing table, so around about the 1800s, and the making of the euro coin was on a drawing table since the end of 1800s, then you know that all the wars that are now going on, especially in the Middle East, are carefully planned and are all according to agenda and script. It is a war between two camps in actuality. One is named Marduk and the other is named Enki. They are battling. In the meanwhile, they are also instigating the second coming, which is already going on, and the second coming of Marduk slash Jesus. So then we also know who Jesus is, and it's not what people think it is. But if you stay stuck on a book and thinking that that is the word and the truth, then you are missing a lot of information that can help you see that the storyline in the Bible is a complete inverted storyline with a lot of distortions in it. And if you know that there are more than 1,000 scriptures being taken out, at least, then you know that that storyline got even more distorted. So, okay, let us end this chapter with the conclusion. So to understand the this better, and with this better is referring to all the three parts of life book readings that I have done so far of this chapter. So please go back to these and re-listen again. In conclusion, to understand all this better, let's summarize what we know so far and add some to it. All right. Pistis Sophia accidentally created the Kenoma, a cluster of universes we call our solar system, and it lacked spirit. It also created a bizarre being floating around in the Kenoma all by itself. And if Pistis Sophia was smart enough and not so naive, then it would have been better if she would have killed this being off. Because that's what you do if you make, as a creator, a mistake, you kill it off. To make sure that you do not get any worse scenario that now has happened for a far too long time. Seemingly as dead as the matter surrounding it, trying to retrieve the entire creation to undo it. She blew spirit into it, the biggest mistake she ever made. Um, Thinking it would consume it. However, that brought life into the abominable being who started moving around. This being was, of course, Yaldabaoth, um, and I also now come to the understanding of this whole lion symbolism that we see, especially in Christianity, because the lion symbolism refers to Yaldabaoth. Thus, he gained spirit from Sophia, which he still possesses, unfortunately. The difference between him and us is that he was created of matter and gained spirit afterward, while we are spirit, who gained matter afterward. Thus we have a spiritual core, while he has a material physical core. So he cannot understand spirit. It is something outside of and separate from him. Whatever Pistis tried, she could not reabsorb the physical universe slash universes, the solar system. So she asked the other aeons for help, but no one was successful. Yaldabaoth then emanated the seven chief archons with capital A and the five below them, whom are controlling the underworld. And he shared some of his fire to animate them, but did not give them his knowledge. They turn created many other archons who created more archons. And the Kenoma became populated with archons with capital A and archons with small a. Tiamat was the first attempt to retrieve spirit from the Kenoma and to terminate Yaldabaoth. So spirit could dissolve the Kenoma. Once Pistis breathed into the dead universe and animated Yaldabaoth, it prevented the Pleroma from reversing her creation. First, all spirit needed to be retrieved, which means Yaldabaoth must be tricked into giving up his spirit, which he holds onto because his life depends on it. The reader might ask themselves why the Pleroma doesn't wait until Yaldabaoth's spirit drains on its own and he dies. Apparently, he gets more and more depleted over time. However, since Sophia breathed spirit into the entire Kenoma, the physical universe is not completely dark, but gloomy. The little spirit that is left is faint and getting fainter. So the Pleroma could probably have waited for spirit to fade, and it would, since the core of the Kenoma is not spirit but matter, a solar system completely void of life force to begin with. Spirit was added afterwards, contrary to the Pleroma, where spirit is the essence, not matter. Therefore, the Kenoma is a mirror of the Pleroma, although a shadow is probably a better term. It is not a so-called real thing, but a reflection of what is, and it is an extremely bad copy. The reason they did not wait was because whatever the archons with capital A did reflected on the Pleroma. So when Yaldabaoth felt envy, rage, or any other negative emotion, it replicated in the spirit world. The Aeons had never felt envy before, and none of the other strange emotions either. At first, they knew not where it came from until they realized it was from Pistis' creation. They demanded that something must be done, or the Pleroma would be increasingly contaminated. When Sabaoth repented and went with Pistis, she emanated Zoe to enlighten him, and Pistis created the eighth heaven for Sabaoth to populate together with Zoe, and the entire realm became full of spirit since Sophia breathed it into the eighth heaven, and apparently continues doing so endlessly to keep spirit thriving there. Even Sabaoth became, so to say, spirited in the same sense Yaldabaoth did, but 7 times more, as the Gnostic texts convey. This made him more powerful than the other archons with capital A. However, just like his so-called father, sorry, Yaldabaoth, his core is physical, so he is not spirited in the sense as we are. The eighth heaven was soon to become the Orion Empire because of the wars that followed when the archons with capital A in the Syrian in the Syrian Empire knocked on Orion's door, wanting to conquer it to gain more spirit. Yeah, you have Orion Universe and Orion Empire. So the Orion Empire is part of the Orion Universe. This eventually led to Zoe making a peace agreement with the Archons, capital A, and some of them were welcome to Orion if they joined the Mi'kmaq Amazon Warrior Defense Force. Yes, as mentioned in the West Penry papers, most Mi'kmaq are Orion females. So Orion female warriors. Also because Atoth, better known as Enki, Yaldabaoth's firstborn, like Sabaoth, seemed to show some capacity to repent. He was also welcome in Orion together with the Syrian Dak warriors. And Dak, it is in actuality Dak, a warrior force. And if you speak it like that, you can almost hear the word dog in it, because the Syrians are a mixture of cat-like, dog-like beings with a reptilian body structure. The Syrian dog warriors, whose task was to guard Orion against the rest of the Syrian archons with capital A. So, who are the overlords that are ruling this world? These are Syrian archons with capital A, because Marduk is a Syrian archon. Should they break the contract, then the Dak had little choice because they were defeated by the Mi'kmaq. Only the Orion Queen's compassion gave them the option to change sides. So I presume the reason for the peace agreement was to temporarily pause further wars affecting the Pleroma. The agreement was another trickery on Orion's part, and they had plans for Enki, as we shall see. So Orion wanted peace so they could more confidently continue a plan that had formed in Pistis' mind, transformed into Zoe's mind. Part of the contract was to give the archons with capital A the solar system so long as they did not break the peace treaty. So the ones that are ruling this earth and are using the proxies and minions here on earth, whom we know as the kings and the queens and the oligarchs, the cabal, the Illuminati, the banking system, and so on. They all are proxies and minions from and for the Syrian archontic overlords. So now I hope you understand by whom we are being ruled. And the Syrian archons are completely full-blown psychopaths. All of them are. And the Sirius star system is completely run by, through, and with psychopathy. So is this what we humans want? Because this is what we see. We see a tremendous rise of narcissism and psychopathy in this world. How is this possible? This is possible because the majority of humans still lack to do self-informance and self-education on the topic of narcissism and psychopathy. And if they would do so, then they would ask the question, where is the actual root laid? Well, the actual root of all this is laid in cosmic scenery and has begun with the takeover from the Syrian archons in this world. And the majority of humanity have been already tremendously sucked into the mindset of these Syrian archontic overlords in such a way that these humans are more and more becoming psychopathic, and unfortunately the majority of them are ruling our governments and are CEOs of corporations and are CEOs from other very important institutions and organizations, and also are part of the royal houses in this world. So now I hope you understand the whole big picture, and that it is of great importance that you understand really what the real deal thing is that we are dealing with for more than 123 thousands of years already. All right, I continue. So Yaldabaoth, also known as Khan and Lil, and Khan is the Syrian word for king. And if you say it in such a way, you can hear it, Khan, Khan. And again, that is Syrian for king. So Yaldabaoth slash Khan and Lil agreed when this was done. Zoe and Sabaoth started the Tiamat experiment. At the same token, Zoe, the Orion Queen, better said a part of the Orion Queen, because she was a part of this Orion Queen, not the full Orion Queen, also taught Enki, now living in the eighth heaven, everything she knew about genetic engineering. And she educated him in Orion technology, We on Earth are dealing with Orion technology that has been deliberately backwards engineered, and so it is working as a weapon against us. So all technology is working against all life forms here in this construct called Earth. Um, So, as a part of the peace agreement, this may sound counterproductive, but Orion had a plan. Already then, they had prepared for a day in the future when the archons with capital A would create their own fashioned body, Homo sapiens. That is the body that we are as spirits in. Our body is this Homo sapiens body. That is, as we now can learn, created by these archons with capital A, using their own DNA, so human spirit could be put inside to condemn the archons with capital A and consume them. Consume all the darkness in this archontic DNA that we carry in us, each one of us, so that this darkness could be transformed into light, and eventually this archontic DNA will deplete and cease to exist, and so the archons will deplete and cease to exist. That was the main plan, and this plan tremendously failed. Again, the many-th plan of the Orion side that failed. For this, the archons with capital A needed technology, of course, because they don't have spirit, so they cannot create from, through, and with spirit. So Enki was the chosen one for this. Of course, Enki was not told that this is what Orion expected from him in the future. Before that, he couldn't do it because he had nothing to copy. And besides, Orion wanted the archons with capital A to create the defected human bodies containing archontic DNA in conjunction with Isis Ninurta DNA. And we are carriers of many more DNA in us. So we have archontic DNA in us, we have Isis Ninurta DNA in us, we also can have Marduk Isis DNA in us, we also can have Marduk Isis Ninurta DNA in us, we also can have Enki Isis Ninurta DNA in us, we can have a vegan DNA in us, and so on. So now you understand that we carry a mishmash of genetics in us, yeah, also known as DNA, which also has an effect on our lives. And because there have been other star races here also in this construct to do their experimentations on us humans, we also carry their genetics. And because of this, these beings think that they, because of the fact that they have inserted genetics, DNA of them in us, makes them having the right to ownership and to own us. So this is the complicated thing that we are in. There are many beings that think that they can claim us, that they can own us, due to the fact that we are unawares of the many genetics slash DNA that we are carriers of in this body, that this body is housing. And now I hope you can understand that this also has tremendous effects on your personality as well, and your life, and your course of destiny. This is the reason the Tiamat experiment needed to happen. First, so the archons with capital A had something to copy and knew how to do it. Because of the early destruction of Tiamat, a second construct needed to be set up until the day it was time for the archons with capital A to copy the Namlu'u bodies. So, the Homo sapiens bodies that we are daily seeing in the mirror, the bodies that we have, are a copy of the Namlu'u slash primordial humans. Therefore, Enki was present at the construction of Tiamat working with Orion and did not participate in Marduk's attack. Even in the second construct, Enki was working with Orion until just before Noah's flood, the famous flood. Tiamat was created in Orion, most likely with Sirius A as its sun. So even the sun is fake that we have. It is a hub. Although I am sure it was not called Sirius A until later, long after the destruction of Tiamat. It was simply an Orion star under an Orion name. Sirius is known as the so-called dog star or dark star, and reverse to the archons with capital A and the appearance of some of them, because some can look like dogs. In the West Penry papers, we learned Tiamat is also the mother's so-called spaceship, which means the Namlu'u lived inside the planet, which was the first Garden of Eden. And it was transported through Orion and placed so that half of it existed in Orion and half in the seventh heaven of the Kenoma. Because the solar system at that time was not lit up by any sun. It was a gloomy environment. Sabaoth opened a stargate between Orion and the Kenoma, which was the planet Saturn. Through that stargate, as the term suggests, the star Sirius shone through the gate and shone through the Kenoma from the seventh heaven and across the other heavenly spheres. This also means Orion sent spirit fire into the Kenoma because stars are pure spirit. It's stars that so-called lighten up Orion. Through them, Orion has spirit since they are Pistis breath. The galactic centers are where her breath enters Orion, and these centers are portals from the ninth to the eighth heaven, where she dwells. Thus, the womb of the mother, as the Pleiadians call the galactic centers. The centers are Pistis out breaths, which create galaxies and stars, i.e., transform spirit from the ninth heaven to the eighth heaven. It is from this principle the term dragon comes from, because if we could see Sophia breathing spirit into matter, it looks as if a dragon is firing. So that is where the term dragon comes from. Sophia breathes fire, which is spirit fire. It is also because of this we have the misnomer that the Orion Queen looks like and is an evil dragon, which is not the case, and a reptilian entity, which is also not the case. So now we learn how uh, deliberately, you can say, things are being taught to us in a distorted way. So we got a distorted image and understanding of symbols and their meanings, which gave, of course, confusion. And who thrives on confusion? Archons with capital A and archons with small a. They thrive on confusion. That is why they have invented this um, Hegelian, what is now called Hegelian dialect, problem, and then reaction, and then solution. Well, this is nothing more than just an archontic thing that the archons themselves have created. And some person uh, down the line of history called it Hegelian dialect, but it's not from Hegel himself. It is directly created from the archons with capital A. They are the ones who create chaos. They are the ones who create all these psychological operations. They are the ones who create the problems in this world. Then they are waiting for us to beg for a solution, and then they give us their solution, which suits their world image, their agendas, and their future, not ours. We are just their slaves. That is something we need to see by now. We are the slaves of a bunch of psychopathic archons. But the Tiamat experiment failed and the Saturn Stargate closed, which means no more spirit fire from Sirius A is directly flowing into the Kenoma system anymore. Although the energy was cut off, there were still remnants left of Sirius A fire in our current solar system, because everything rotates in circles, so circular, and on a grander scale, spiral movements. This fire accumulated and created Sol, which is the object we see out there in the solar system, but it's not the real sun. Thus, we could metaphorically say that our sun is a hub that has been cut off from its source but still contains some energy. Scientists say the sun will die in a few billions of years, and although stars do not normally so-called die, our sun might, or dissolve rather, because it is being stripped completely of energy from the original Orion sun. Therefore, the scientists might be correct, and um, this means that if nothing is done about the archons with capital A and the Kenoma from an Orion perspective, the Kenoma will have spirit for maybe 4.5 billion years more, which is the estimated time the sun will exist, according to science. Well, that is a long time, considering everything that happens here also affects Orion and the Pleroma. After the destruction of Tiamat, Orion kept the experiment on hold for some time, but they did not give up. So Sabaoth and Zoe returned here and terraformed Earth, and Enki, who still had access to the eighth heaven, followed them down to help out. So The Namlu'u populated the remnants of Tiamat, then called Gaia, and later Earth. And it seems that Earth is in actuality also named after Enki, because he eventually created everything here. Um, so our current sun was used as an energy source, and a projection was reflected into our atmosphere to bring light into the Gaia construct, since we live inside the planet and under a dome. Enki had been promised to stay in Orion if he showed repentance and helped them out, although he would not be king but the prince of Orion. This apparently infuriated Enki and was a major reason for his later rebellion. And so eventually Enki decided to help the Syrian overlords known as the Syrian archons with capital A and small a. We know Enki was full of pride, entitlement, and grandiosity, like all archons. So now we know where narcissism and psychopathy, envy, grandiosity, and pride are coming from. This and these are nothing more than archontic features, or you can say characteristics. Um, we know Enki was full of pride, entitlement, and grandiosity, like all these archons are. He insisted he should be king of Orion and not only a prince. Also, he understood he would never be in control of humankind, since Ninurta was in charge of the second construct as well. So, therefore, Enki started to rebel. Behind everybody's back, he gathered the archontic dark warriors of Sirius star system, who had joined the Mach and convinced a third of those, between quotation marks, angels, to follow him in the rebellion to overthrow the queen and Sabaoth and take the throne of Orion for himself. Fortunately, the plan was discovered, however, and Sabaoth threw Enki and the rebels down into the Kenoma again, and no archons with capital A and small a are welcome in Orion anymore. After being manipulated by Zoe, Yaldabaoth wanted to create his own humans, and Yaldabaoth is also known as Khan Enlil. Exactly per Orion's plan, Enki, who was highly trained, saw his chance to control our soul group and make us his property. So now you can see that we are nothing more than just property to them. We are not living human beings. We're not life. We are just property, livestock. So he put himself in the position as the chief engineer. Thus, he finally got to hold that position, although not in Orion. With his knowledge, he could help the rest of the authorities, better known as the Archons with capital A, to improve the human copy. After the flood, when Gaia befitted Earth, the planet soon became an enclosed system, and decreased in density, so was being brought into the frequency of the third density. And what the archons with capital A are now doing through the help of all their proxies and minions, institutions and organizations here on earth is to bring the human soul group into the second dimension, into the frequency of the second dimension, which makes life in this construct known as Earth harsher and harsher and more dense, so more matter, which will deplete our spirit, which will deplete our soul. This is exactly what they want. They want to kill our spirit that is in us. So, knowing this, then you now know why the singularity is there, why metaverse is there. It is the last and final trap for the entire human soul group. They want to have the human's spirit and thus the human soul group in its entirety trapped into the singularity and thus metaverse. And the cloud is the technological bad copy of the pleroma. And so that is then the mind system through which the archons with a capital A are programming through several of us the rest, so that the rest will exactly do what the program is telling the rest to do, that is being installed in just a few humans that the archons had programmed uh, to do a certain task. This is their utter plan. This is why we see a total destruction of life on this planet, because this planet needs to become total death. No life, no living tree, no living animal, no living human. This is also one of the main reasons why we see for several decades now, and I mean really for more than 4 decades, that we see a lot of animal group consciousnesses leaving this construct known as Earth. Many animals are consciously deciding to leave us. And the whales and the dolphins also have decided as group to leave us, to leave this construct. And if they are all completely gone, then the human soul group will decline rapidly, because the whales and the dolphins are, as a matter of fact, our last um, uh, um, string that we can hold on to. Because what I say, the majority of humans are refusing to self-inform themselves and to do self-education, which means they lack deeper understanding of what is truly happening here on Earth, this third construct, with all consequences, and with not realizing that they not only bring themselves but the rest of their fellow brothers and sisters also in a position that becomes harsher and harsher to leave. So wake the heck up and share all these live book videos that I have created to help your fellow brothers and sisters to get themselves informed. Because there will be no Savior, there will be no Jesus, there will be no God. No one comes to save the human race. No one. The only one who can save themselves is the human being themselves. And the mission that we have to accomplish here is the consummating of all darkness in all the archontic DNA that we carry in us. That is what we need to do. And the more of us whom are doing so, the better. The more weakened this grid will become, the more holes will exist through which those who die can leave this construct and go back to Orion universe. And from there, eventually, they can go back to the Pleroma. I continue. The archons with capital A did this to isolate the experiment and make humans ignorant. That is why they say to us, oh yeah, but ignorance is bliss. The trade-off was a decrease in spirit, a decrease in spirit. So if they bring us deeper into matter and thus into the beginnings of the second dimension, this means a total depletion of our spirit. Wake up. Fire, so decrease in spirit fire, since our soul group became more disconnected from each other and from spirit. So the more disconnected we get from the spirit fire in us and that we are, the more it gets depleted. When the earth sank from the seventh heaven, in which the second Atlantis play out, and into the abyss, so we are in actuality living in the abyss, in a section of the abyss, because you have a higher section, a mid section, and a lower section. And into the abyss, the denser it became and the less spirit access there was, both for us humans and the entire matrix, which is the third construct that we are in, as well as the archons with capital A locked us in. They also locked themselves in too, since then they have dependent upon us to gain life energy, also known as loosh. So now you can understand why they see us as living battery and do everything to suck us dry from life force on daily basis, 24/7. Because we were put into these bodies containing archontic DNA. Orion tried to place karma on the archons with capital A so we could condemn them and thus be able to consume them. But they, the archons with capital A, were thinking of how they could bypass this, and they managed to bypass this. And now we are also carriers of their karma, and we are being judged uh, due to all the things they have done, and we may carry their karma and their judgment. Ain't not really fair, isn't it? So we now know it all backfired, and which is why Ninurta Sabaoth is so angry at Enki for tricking Orion and destroying the plan. Enki became known as a trickster god by making us amnesiac. The archons with capital A could control us and the inflow and outflow of spirit fire for a long time within this matrix. We could still gain supply from the central fire, which is basically pistis, via the fire she breathes into the myriads of galaxies across Orion, because the Kenoma in its entirety depletes pistis from her spirit. We contribute to that depletion because we take from pistis and then we give it unconsciously to the archons, because the archons are forcing us into doing things that depletes us from life force, because the things that we do gives them opening to suck the life force out of us. Yeah, so the archons are vampiric. Because the Kenoma in its entirety depletes pistis from spirit, we contribute to that depletion by breathing in more fire supplied by pistis instead of doing what we were supposed to do, which was the opposite. We are further depleting pistis, her energy, and giving it to the archons with capital A and small a, and also fueling the entire matrix system as mentioned in a video called Moksha, as well released by a remote viewing group led by a remote viewer, Brad Stewart. Thus, we are stealing the energy from Pistis, our genuine mother, and recycling it. Recycling it. So that is what the whole recycling symbolism means that we see on each and every package. It all refers to this, what I am passing on to you, this information. Thus, we are stealing, so to say, the energy from Pistis, our genuine mother. So we are sucking dry our genuine mother also, and recycling it within the matrix to give her life energy to the bullshit archontic beings, to these vampiristic, full-blown psychopathic archons with small a and capital A, rather than taking it away from them, which was our purpose in the first place. When Zoe and Sabaoth noticed this, Pistis via Zoe gave the archons with capital A an ultimatum to set humans free and let us, between quotation marks, graduate. But of course, they didn't do this. Immediately, to emphasize the seriousness of this ultimatum, Pistis, via Zoe, strangled the matrix system of retrieving additional spirit fire from the pleroma. So they cut us out, and the only energy left here is what humans have in their reservoir. And as we all look outside around us, if we look closely around us, we are going to see more and more depleted humans. Now, in combination with these needle tasks, better known as Sticky the Pricky, that they have done in 2020, in combination with that, these humans deplete even faster. And this is what we are now calling zombies. So what is a zombie? Zombie is nothing more than a being or human being that is completely depleted from life force energies and becomes so monstrous that it looks like a human. Yeah, and it walks like a human, but it's not acting as such. It's acting as a monster. And this is exactly what we are now starting to see around us, and in combination with all these smack scenes that the archons with capital A are trying to mandate. Well, then you can make the picture complete. Depleted humans, loaded and stuffed with smack scenes. Well, that gives a nice combination in togetherness. You do not have to have a huge imagination to imagine what type of being that will be formed. So, and within little time that will be depleted also, which Orion hoped would eventually flash out the archons with capital A and small a, who then would lose their grip on the human soul group and do something drastic Orion could take advantage of. They were correct, and the archons, with capital A, under Marduk's supervision, were speeding up their plans to create the singularity. So the metaverse and the singularity are both an archontic construction. And so is artificial intelligence, which is not intelligent at all. It's all archontic creations. So if you play with it, then you allow to have a piece of your consciousness sucked into an archontic mind, because that is what they do. Artificial intelligence is a portal for the archons through which they can steal not only our life force but also a piece of our consciousness. So be careful with what you are playing with. And we can see the effects on that today. Technology is rapidly expanding at a ridiculous speed, and the Lite is rapidly putting restrictions on us. That is what we now also for decades see. And the restrictions are eventually leading that we will, and that is what they are hoping for, that we will give up our free will and our sovereignty. If the majority of humans are so stupid to do so, then the archons have a huge army created. So technology is expanding at a ridiculous speed, and the Lite is rapidly putting restrictions on us. And this is exactly what we see, because we're not allowed to do this anymore, to do that anymore. And if you're lucky, you can still travel around, but don't be surprised if that in near future also will be thought of, and that there comes restrictions on that one too. So creating major inconveniences for common people, trying to force us into metaverse, trying to force us into singularity metaverse. Now you get the understanding why the things are happening in this world as they are happening right now and for decades. Again, they use the problem, reaction, solution formula and all the patterns that they have. Because a pattern, as we have learned from the last book reading, is in actuality a handy and cleverly set up tool, because the patterns are in actuality a proof to the archons that we have given them consent for their plans and agendas. Another tool that they have invented is the voting system. The voting system is completely archontic and is a tool in which they, uh, besides of the patterns, also use the voting system to get our consent for their evil plans and agendas of total destruction and killing of all life. So do not vote. They create all these problems in the world, making life very difficult and threatening. Humans want this to end, and the solution to the problem the archons with capital A and small a created is the singularity. So the singularity is their solution for all the problems that they themselves, the archons themselves, have deliberately created so that we would run to them and beg them for a solution. And this solution is the final entrapment and death trap for us human spirit. So, the archons created the singularity where we will be between quotation marks, immortal, because they know, the archons know, that the majority does not know that they are already immortal because they are spirit, and spirit is immortal. We are already immortal living beings. We are immortal living spirit. So why should we become immortal if we already are immortal? But because of the fact that the majority of our fellow brothers and sisters lack in-depth information and are still in a form of amnesia, they think that this whole singularity can be of a great thing, not knowing that they are stepping into their final death trap. And between quotation marks, live happily after, and live happily ever after. Yeah, but this happily, take that word happily out of it, because the humans will live in another level of hell, because that is what metaverse singularity is. Not so. They have plans for us. Of course they do. We would never agree to if we knew what these plans were. More about that later. Well, I can say from all the information that I have been through, and those who have listened along all these weeks that I'm presenting this information, we know that the archons with capital A have also created the singularity metaverse, not only to use it as the final death trap for the human spirit, but also to confiscate the spiritual body of us humans, which is our avatar, so that they can steal that spirit body of us and use it as a vehicle to invade the Orion universe and to go into a final cosmic war between them and Orion. And we are their doormat, foot soldiers, pawns in this whole end game. This is the final plan that they have with us and for us. So please wake up and share all this information to help your fellow brothers and sisters to get informed, and so they can wake up too. So the so-called debt is basically to pay back the energy to Pistis Sophia that the archons have used. The archons with capital A and small a do not have the resources. So who is the one who is going to pay for all that debt? Well, us humans. We may pay the debt that these archontic beings, these assholes, have created, and now they are using us in that matter too. We may pay the debt to our genuine mother back, instead of they, the archons themselves. So the debt lands on us also because the archons bypassed their karma and put that also on us as well, and manipulated us into giving our consent at any given moment, even with giving them our energy. They consider themselves, between quotation marks, innocent and not accountable. Well, that's the illusion they keep themselves in and stuck. Humans did it. Oh, but it was not us, is their jargon. And this jargon is something we see being played out in the governmental system. and in the law system. Oh, yeah, but it was not me, it was him. Because the whole governmental structure and the law system in this world is completely on archontic foundation based. It is not there for us humans. Technically, because of the way we have been manipulated, all this has come to us, and that is where our repentance comes into the picture. Repentance, although I know it is a loaded word for many, means that we stop giving pistis energy to the archons and the matrix and detach from everything that has to do with the matrix and return to Orion through a hole in the grid when we die. So this means that you have to think about your near future and have to make a plan and yeah, prioritize what is really important, being a person that is still participating in the system, or are you willing to give up everything and to just go and live maybe a nomadic life that makes you lesser connected to the entire matrix system? Because the matrix system, as we all know, is based on paying tax, enslavement, enslavement to the archontic overlords, doing their bidding, terraforming this earth into their imagery of how they see fit that the earth needs to be. So this means if you are in a job and knowing all this, and you see that you are participating in a job that is all based on this, then you need to make a decision. Do you still want to participate in this for the sake of the stupid money or not? And just trust in the fact that whatever you do, that you will manage to live. So this is in actuality the thing that you need to think for and over carefully. Do you still want to participate? If so, do then not complain, stop complaining, and accept your own choice. If you do not want to participate, then you make the steps. You build a plan, you make a plan B, and you start work on that plan B, and you make sure that you are becoming lesser and lesser and lesser connected with the matrix system, this third construct. And if that means that you have to live from things that the nature is giving you only, and that you have to give up all your fake luxury, then it is so, because it's all fake. You are living a fake life. You are nothing more than just living your enslavement. You're not living life at all. The entire purpose of Orion in giving me the information that became the West Penry Papers was to educate humans to a certain degree, enough for us to understand the seriousness of this situation and help do something about it. We can only do it by enlightening ourselves so we can exit through a hole in the grid. Humans who repent will not be responsible for the, between quotation marks, depth. If we return to Orion and or start using our spirit energy to benefit the divine realm rather than the matrix. Um, And here as last, um, I will skip a huge part in this. So I will also bring up how we who refuse to go into the singularity can cope with reality, that we do not need to worry that we cannot exit after the singularity is established. And in actuality, it is already here. The current state of affairs, however, shows humankind in general is factually dead. So the current state of affairs, however, shows humankind in general is factually already dead, operating almost only from a physical perspective without knowing what we are doing. And this is exactly what we see, because if the majority of us was not as a zombie already, we would not participate in the rolling out of electric cars, bullshit solar panels, and whatever terraforming that is going on that these human beings are doing, our fellow brothers and sisters are doing, whom are working for corporations, institutions, and systems, all sponsored and led by archons. But like lighthouses or oases in a desert, some are now reviving and coming back to life by illuminating themselves and reawakening. Humans have become in the likeness of the archons. So now you get the understanding of the sentence in the Genesis book. We will make them into our image, which is the image of the archons. Since victims of abuse take on more and more of the personality of the abuser, a known concept in psychology, we are mostly disconnected from the spirit that is descended upon us. We are not reporting back, as my contact in Orion puts it. The great majority of humans are almost as dead as the archons. And now you get the understanding why so many are still blindly participating in everything, and why we see so many of our brothers and sisters, if when we look to them, that we look in empty eyes. Albeit we humans are, between quotation marks, dead with potential. I have mentioned multiple times that star beings in Orion are very hesitant to let us in. And many of us have been frustrated over this, thinking that whatever happened here is not our fault. Orion knows this, very true, but it doesn't, change the following. In our current raw state, we are very dangerous and violent. However, that is not a primary reason for Orion's hesitation. It is because Orion is lit up. It is a spiritual place, an environment illuminated by fire in combination with matter, as my contact in Orion said. Everything is lit up. Light is spirit. So if the human soul group entered Orion in the sorry state that we are in, it would certainly contaminate much of the eighth heaven and darken it and make it more like the Kenoma some of us want to leave. Orion does not want to happen. So Orion does not want that this to happen. This, I believe, is another reason Orion has not intervened more. Do not steer the pot too much, or the result might be something uncalled for. If we want an example, look at the following, which is an excerpt from the West Penry Papers, the second level of learning, and that this is also the last piece of text. And then we have finished this chapter. Going backwards in time again for a moment, things changed drastically in the whole universe back in 1945, when we opened up the gateways to the universe and made our presence known in the most destructive way. We had learned how to split the atom and used that knowledge to nuke Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Watching the mushroom clouds reach the sky, some watched it with excitement, thinking it was a wonderful revenge for the attack on Pearl Harbor. America is great! In an instant, we told the universe where we are. That is when star beings from all over the universe rushed over here across the dimensions. Most of them were extremely concerned because here was a civilization, so-called civilization, I wouldn't call it civilization at all, who could split the atom but used it destructively on their own planet, their own home. And the effects of those explosions, plus all of those that came after, rippled out across the dimensions in a most destructive way. And we are totally unawares of the effect that everything has that we do and think. We told the universe, hey, we are here, but no one was impressed. Of course not. Most were happy that we were kept in quarantine and voted for that we should be remain isolated. That way, no one wanted to give us a ticket to the stars. This no doubt greatly affected both Orion and the Pleroma. People do not know how destructive we have become as species. This is just one example, and it is very sad. And if people do not wake up to this and start the journey of introspection, humankind is in deep, 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 deep trouble. If the human soul group stays asleep, things will undoubtedly get worse and eventually can also result in the total extinction of the majority of the human race. If the human soul group stays asleep, things will undoubtedly get worse. Humans are very strong and spirited, and once we set our minds on something, we can be like laser beams. But first, we must be willing to put our minds to it and stop being lazy and fearful, relying and depending on the archons. We need to stop our dependentness on these stupid archons. Stop relying and being dependent on them. We are far more than they are. As the reader notices, those who make decisions in society are often called, between quotation marks, the authorities. It is the same term used for the archons in the Gnostic texts. And with this said, we now know that then authorities are being ruled by archontic beings. And so I have come to the end of this chapter from this magnificent book, Battles Between Shadow and Light, written by Wes Penry. This was chapter 7 in 4 parts presented to you. Please re-listen to this information. I bring you this information so that you can make decisions for yourself how you want your future to be. And if you still want to participate in all these archontic agendas that are now going all over Earth. All right. I close off with a nice piece of music created by Ben Sound, and it is called Hope. And let us indeed hope that many, many of our fellow brothers and sisters will wake up, will get this information, and will decide to stop participating in all these archontic agendas. We need to wake up. We need to detach ourselves from all these archontic structures, such as government, the banking system, and so on. We need to stop being dependent on them. We are spirited beings. We have far more DNA strands in us than they have. So let us wake up and let us turn the tables in our benefit, not in theirs any longer. And I want to say, please be very careful with using all these technologies. They're not what you think they are. All right, this is all archontic technology, in actuality in baseline Orion technology, but the archons have done something to it, so it works in their favor and not in ours. All right, I wish you all a beautiful day filled with a lot of love, joy, peace, and truth and revelations, all coming from your own spirit. See you next time.